you got to look for signs entrepreneurially. You have to look for signs. I think if you don't see any signs of anything, I think that's a sign that either you're not looking for the right things. It could be one of three things: not looking for the right things, or what you're focusing on is not correct, or you haven't yet sort of honed your entrepreneurial skills of spotting opportunities. And I say skills because that's something you can learn. I don't think I came with that skill. Now we've gotten a lot better. So I don't know, and I consider it a blessing that our existing business dropped. I don't know, with the money that we were making and everything going on, that we would have made this dramatic shift if we didn't see it drop. And so yeah, it really was a factor of what we were doing wasn't working anymore, combined with a new opportunity fell in our lap. But that's oversimplifying it a little bit, because the truth is, we did originate and refer that case. We were already doing what eventually became our core business. We just had not realized how profitable it could be if we executed it right. That was the difference.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to From Crisis to Justice. I'm your host, Parag Amin. Thanks for coming back. If you're joining us again, if you're joining for the first time, welcome. I'm here with a special guest, my friend, Shiva Bhaskar, who's not only an attorney, but he is also the co-founder and head of legal strategy and head lawyer at Tier 1. He oversees all efforts relating to enforcing federal and state consumer protection laws on behalf of his clients, as well as assisting them with credit repair issues. He is also an investor in the multifamily space, heading up one of the a syndicate in the multifamily space. And so I'm really excited to talk to you, Shiva, as always. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Parag. Glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about this journey. I mean, did you always know that you were going to start your own business out of law school, or was that just something that happened?
It very much was something that happened. You hear the classic entrepreneurial story of the kid who was selling lemonade or whatever else, on the street where they grew up. I can't say that I was that kid. I grew up here in the Los Angeles area. Had a wonderful childhood, definitely very educationally focused. So went to college, took a couple of years off, then went to law school. And when I went to law school at Parag's rival school at UCLA. And when I was there, I started in 2007, and my focus was I thought I would be a transactional attorney dealing with, M&A, debt offerings, IPOs, private equity, that whole world. And I eventually saw myself maybe being on the non-attorney side of the business, meaning working in an investment firm as a principal or some other capacity. That's what, if you ask me at that time, that's what I visualized. For folks who remember 2008, we had a big crash. Financial markets came grinding to a halt. With that was the type of work I just mentioned. So I graduated from law school in 2010 when the transactional market was absolutely dead. And I had to figure out what I wanted to do. So I took the bar in California. Then I took the bar in New York because I had interned out in New York City. And I was born on the East Coast and lived there when I was very young. So, had a lot of friends, family out there. So I took both bars, and then I decided I was interviewing for jobs here in LA, wasn't finding what I wanted. So I decided to move to New York with no job. As one of my friends aptly put it, moved from the second most expensive area at the time to probably the most expensive one. Although now I think LA has New York beat on that category. But moved there, didn't have a job, lived with my aunt, got a job at a real estate brokerage. For people who are familiar, in New York City, you would use brokers in many cases to rent apartments. And in many cases, you would also end up paying their fee. So I took that job, nothing to do with law, but my other option was working in document prep in a contract role, which I didn't want to do. So I did that. Eventually ended up finding a legal law firm job and doing that. But that early dose of being in the real estate space and being in something entrepreneurial where I had to make my own money, full 100% commission, I got the entrepreneurial bug. And so what happened while working out there started at one firm, then moved to another after a few years in commercial litigation. What basically happened, Parag, was during the process of when I moved to New York and I didn't have any money coming in, I had a lot of late payments on my credit. on my student loan specifically. And I wanted to clear those up because now I was situated. Now I had money. I eventually ended up getting those loans paid off, but the lates were still remaining. And so what happened was my now business partner, Anthony Budry, who's a childhood friend of mine, he had worked with another attorney when he was a mortgage lender, and they had helped clients resolve credit issues. So I told Tony about what the issues were, and he helped me get these resolved just on his own as a friend. And then I'm working in New York, and I said, you know what? This whole credit thing is so legal. I'm an attorney. Tony has a background in this. What if we started our own thing? And to make a long story short, what happened was I started volunteering with a legal aid clinic in New York City. For people who are familiar, it's called Claro, the Civil Legal Aid Resource Office. And people who are being sued in debt collection lawsuits would be able to get representation pro bono from an attorney. And I went there and started doing it because I'm like, if you're getting sued on a debt, the odds are it's on your credit report and you have other issues on your credit. And I would just help people with this issue, go in there once or twice a month and talk to people about their credit issues. And that's how we started doing our early customer discovery and learning about it. Long story short, ended up moving back to California and back to Los Angeles after about 5.5 years in New York. Tony and I really launched what we were doing with Tier 1 in 2017. We started out doing a bit of litigation, but mostly doing credit repair. So someone has something bad on their credit. Maybe it's not worth suing over, but it's still got some level of inaccuracy. We would represent them, and they would pay us if we got the item removed. We did that for quite a while we would have legal cases come in, meaning where there's a serious error on a credit report or serious harassment by a collector. And we would do those cases, either co-counsel them with another firm or refer them. But it was not the focus of what we were doing. And we continued with this model through the pandemic, really grew that way for about 5.5 years. And then in 2023, we realized that we could serve people a lot more effectively if we started to look for what are those violations on credit reports and put the case together and refer it to other attorneys. So we really started focusing on all the legal causes of action that exist around credit. And we no longer offer credit repair. We may bring it back as a DIY platform, likely for free or low cost at some point. But we now operate around the country. People contact us when they have something on their credit that they feel is unfair or illegal, or if they just have bad credit. Our team examines the reports. We look at what happened. We look at the facts of the case. And if we think there's something, we will connect them with another law firm, or we will provide them and handle dispute letters completely free of charge, no out-of-pocket costs. And if there is a case, we refer them to a firm, or we co-counsel it if they're here in California. And the great thing with these laws is that you don't have to pay out of pocket. By law, the attorney's fees have to be paid by the credit agencies or the creditors or collection agencies. So that's what we do. We basically act as a sort of resource or a clearinghouse if someone has issues on their credit. We look for what may be illegal or could be construed to be somehow not fully in compliance with the law. And then if we find such a thing, we refer it to the appropriate attorney around the country if it's not something that's in our local area. So that's what we do.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about you having moved out to New York after law school. There's the financial meltdown and you're just trying to find your way. Were you confident that whole time that you would figure it out, or were you just trying to figure out, hey, listen, I'll take anything that helps me pay off these loans and do the work? Tell us a little bit about that, how you got over maybe some of the concerns, challenges, and stress as you're navigating your way through what was one of the biggest financial crises in decades.
Sure. Thank you. Well, to answer that, Parag, the great answer would be, I always knew that I would make it. That's not the truthful answer. The real answer is that I had no idea what the heck I was doing. I just knew that whatever I was doing here wasn't working. So I had to take some action. And that's a lesson I've learned. Sometimes you have to take a step. Don't take a step that is going to harm anyone else or is going to, irreparably damage you. But saying, hey, I'm trained for this, but I can't find a job in it right now. Let me find out what else works. That's what I did. So I ended up moving in. I moved to my aunt lives in the Upper West Side. I moved to my aunt's place, lived on the couch, did that for a few months, and then ended up taking over a friend's sublet, a friend's apartment, which ended up being the place I lived, which ended up being with some other friends for the next several years. But I really didn't know Parag. I found the job off of Craigslist, no joke. The real estate brokers advertised on Craigslist. When I went and told them what I was doing and why I was doing this, I think all the brokers were a bit taken aback that with my education, this is what I wanted to do. But I told them, look, I want to make money. I always liked real estate. My other option is go work in this dingy room doing doc review for not a great salary. I said, at least here I'm going to learn sales. I'm going to get out and hustle. I'm going to see New York City. I was a few pounds heavier. I'm going to lose some weight walking around the city renting apartments. That was my mindset. And eventually I did plan to look for law firm jobs, and I did look for them. But initially, the first several months, I was strictly focused on how do I make some money and how do I succeed at what I'm doing. That was really the focus. So I don't know that I knew that I would make it, but I knew that whatever I was doing wasn't going to work. So my options were either stay stuck in the same position or try something different. And I took the leap. And I think any entrepreneur or anyone who's thinking about this, I would never be one to say that you should just jump in and do things. I think if you look at what we did with Tier 1, it was very deliberate. In fact, looking back, I think we could have started the company a year earlier and still had the same outcome or even gotten there faster, but that's the journey. But I would say at some point you have to figure out and cut your losses. Like there is a time when you have to go all in, and me moving to New York with no job was basically, that was the version of it. And the great thing about that was that when I had to do that again with Tier 1, I mean, I could have stayed at a law firm, making good money. When I had to start my own company and coming back to LA, it didn't feel uncomfortable because I had been in this position once before, and I was in a far better position financially, mentally, in terms of my skill sets as well than I was back then. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I do think that, well, one, I agree with you, but I think it's also my own biases, which is that entrepreneurs tend to have this bias towards action versus inaction. Mm-hmm. Sometimes maybe to a detriment. So can you tell us a little bit about a big part relating to entrepreneurship and successful entrepreneurship is the art of the pivot. So we hear about this in various industries. Now, you've pivoted Tier 1 as well. So you don't offer any credit repair anymore. You used to. You might bring it back, but now you're focused on something else. So how did you go about making that decision? Because that's not an easy decision to make, especially if that was a core part of your business initially. And how did you make the decision that this is definitely the right direction for you? Or did you just take a leap of faith and see how it would work out?
Sure. So this pivot was partially strategic out of finding a better opportunity. And it was partially out of seeing a drop in our existing business. So to set the stage, as your audience probably remembers, because it's very recent, in starting around March of 2022, as inflation increased, we saw a lot of hikes in interest rates by the Federal Reserve, which meant the real estate market dropped in terms of not home prices, but real estate activity, people buying homes and so forth. And why that's relevant here was one of the biggest reasons that someone would want to repair their credit is because they want to buy a home, followed by funding a business. But if interest rates go way up and people are pulling back, and a lot of these would be first-time home buyers. So it's to begin with, for many of my clients, coming up with the down payment to begin with was work. And then now rates are higher. It led to a shift. So we saw our monthly inflow of credit repair clients dropping. And I still work and partner with credit repair firms, and I see that that trend has not shifted. It's remained much lower than it was from 2018 to 22. So part of it was that. And part of it was a very fortunate thing that happened, which was we had a gentleman who found us off the internet. He lived in New Jersey, where I was born. He had immigrated to this country from China. He worked in tech. His wife, I believe, is a nurse. Yeah, she's a nurse. And long story short, what happened was someone opened a credit card with Bank of America in his name. They stole his identity. It was not his card. He had two kids, and he and his wife were trying to buy a home. But an account that was written off with $8,000 owed, no mortgage lender would approve them, even though the rest of their credit was perfect. And he immigrated to this country in the classic story, you want to achieve the American dream. But it was impossible. And the guy had done everything. And then he found us, and he's like, you have to help me. I don't know what to do here. And so we took a look, and we're like, well, you've done what you need to. Now we need to sue the credit agencies. And what happened was I have a firm that I work with, colleagues and friends of mine who are in New Jersey and New York who represent people over there. We reached out to them. We had worked with them before on smaller cases, although they handled much bigger ones. We just hadn't sent them. And we sent this gentleman over, did one more dispute with the credit agencies, and then they went ahead and sued uh, Bank of America as well as the credit reporting agencies. And settlement terms are confidential, but I'll put it this way: uh, the case, we received a portion of the attorney's fees for referring the case, and what we realized was that the settlement amounts were what we would have made on dozens of credit repair clients. Okay. And so what that led to, Parag, was that I understood not every case would be like that. But I said, if we can get some cases like this, refer them to other firms, we originate them, bring them in, we have our channels, and then some that are smaller, and then use our good reputation and that to do it and do it. So part of it was our existing business was dropping, and then we had the fortune of this happening. And at the same time, another colleague who I already worked with on some cases, who does the work we do, he reached out and said that the universe of cases he could sue on was expanding. And so we realized, hey, there's even more cases we can refer. So it was really a convergence of a few things. One was our business was having trouble in its existing offering. And number two was that we sort of just randomly fell into a larger case and we saw the money that came in. And that kind of gave us, you got to look for signs entrepreneurially. You have to look for signs. I think if you don't see any signs of anything, I think that's a sign that either you're not looking for the right things. It could be one, three things. Either you're not looking for the right things, or what you're focusing on is not correct, or you haven't yet sort of honed your entrepreneurial skills of spotting opportunities. And I say skills because that's something you can learn. I don't think I came with that skill. Now we've gotten a lot better. So I don't know, and I consider it a blessing that our existing business dropped. I don't know with the money that we were making and everything going on that we would have made this dramatic shift if we didn't see it drop. And so, yeah, it really was a factor of what we were doing wasn't working anymore, combined with a new opportunity fell in our lap. But that's oversimplifying it a little bit, because the truth is we did originate and refer that case. We were already doing what eventually became our core business. We just had not realized how profitable it could be if we executed it right. That was the difference.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. It's interesting because some of the biggest challenges and pitfalls can become one of the greatest opportunities, provided that it's played correctly. So I agree with you in multiple levels, including that point, as well as the fact that it is a skill set. The ability to spot opportunity truly is a skill set. And obviously part of it is repetitions, just like anything else. It's just putting in the reps of spotting opportunities in various areas. But is there anything else that you can think of that can help somebody develop that entrepreneurial skill?
There is. There are two things that I have found in my journey that helped. One was interact with a variety of people and soak up information from different sources. I would describe I wouldn't describe myself as extroverted in the sense that I grab every person walking down the street to shake their hand. But in general, I think people who know me would say I'm a pretty outgoing guy. And certainly in the business context, I enjoy connecting with a lot of people. And so for me, but it doesn't matter if you're more introverted. I was in many ways, and in many ways, I still think with certain things I am. Talk to a variety of people, interact with people who are not just in your field. As an attorney, I have found, and I can say it to Parag because I know he's one of the exceptions, a lot of lawyers don't necessarily connect with enough non-attorneys outside of their clients. And I'm not just talking about networking and trying to grab, business cards and LinkedIn connections. Really hear different perspectives and different things, because, one thing that we're working on right now, in addition to what we're doing, is becoming an employee benefit where employers could pay a small fee to us each month, and any credit issues their employee has is covered. And Parag, I wouldn't know about that if it weren't for having friends of mine who work in Silicon Valley and other things, or who work in the HR and employee benefit side, where they've raised these issues, and I've seen how other companies have approached it. So meet people who are different. You never know where a conversation will lead. That's number one. Be very intentional about that. Set aside time that you say, hey, you know what? These 4 hours or this entire day, honestly, as your business grows, it should be multiple days, are strictly set aside for building relationships, connecting. I consider it an extension of marketing and sales is doing that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is soak up a variety of information. In my case, certain work that I would do in tier one, especially in the early days or even today, as much as we've delegated, there is still some amount of busy work rather than deep work like creating content or analyzing a case. There is some amount of busy work. What I do when I have busy work, and this works for me, is I put on podcasts in the background. Or when I have a long drive, I put on podcasts. And the podcasts I listen to are about a variety of subjects. Not all of them are business related. I listen to a lot of true crime and random stuff, but I do listen to some business related ones, and I think I learn from them. Both in my field or in other fields. I listen to some AI and technology ones, and that's interesting. Soak in information outside your field. Subscribe to random email news lists and actually read what they say. Okay, like if you're a restaurant owner, maybe go sign up for a few newsletters that talk about AI or that talk about medical or that talk about politics or anything else. It's just going to expand your horizons, give you ideas. Because a lot of what we're doing, especially on the marketing side and the business side, we did not learn these things from other attorneys. We learned it from A, being out in the field, and B, hearing the experiences of other people. I mean, there's a podcast called Marketing School with Eric Sue and Neil Patel. I don't listen as regularly as I used to, but I still listen. My first year in business, I realized I knew nothing about marketing. Each episode is 6-7 minutes long. I would just sit there, listen to that episode, take a few notes, and say, okay, here's something for me to learn. I would encourage folks to really listen to stuff that A, relates to your business, but some stuff that's B, outside of your immediate vertical. You're going to learn a lot, and you're going to start connecting ideas. That's how you get creative, is connecting ideas by listening to things you don't normally listen to.
Yeah, I love that. And I completely agree with it. I think that the best entrepreneurs tend to be naturally very curious. Mm-hmm. And I think there's two kind of mindsets that people can approach situations with. One is, I pretty much know everything about it, or I don't care. Or two, I'm very much interested in this. Surely, even if I know something about this person might know something that I know nothing about, even on the same topic that I might know a decent amount about. And it's probing and asking those questions, naturally curious questions, and being a sponge for information that lets you then, as you reflect back on the conversation or a random thought appears to you, whether you're doing something idly or walking or showering or at that moment where you're not really necessarily thinking about anything in particular, and an idea will strike you, is always very fascinating and useful. In terms of your conversations with people, are there certain kind of questions you ask that you found have been helpful in getting certain responses that are helpful for you in terms of ideas?
Sure. So for me, asking the right questions and just learning to listen more was a work in progress and something I had to learn. But I always knew it was important because, I like to talk. I have things to say, but I want to learn. So a few things. I like to start, if someone's open to it and comfortable with it, I like to start with understanding their story, their personal story a little bit. I think it's different in every context, but personally, the people that I do work with and I've learned the most from, I know a lot about them personally. I mean, we end up becoming friends, so obviously I would, but I think try to understand people's personal story and perspective a little bit. That might help you connect the dots better in terms of what they tell you. Now, once you move on from that, okay, in the business context, try to just understand what it is that they do. Like, just tell them, hey, I always tell people, and this is the truth almost all the time, because I think there's so many businesses, even within fields of law, and let alone other businesses that I know nothing about. I'll just tell them, hey, I really don't know a lot about this. So I might ask you some stupid questions, but I would just love to know more and understand what it is that you do and kind of how you got into it. That's where I start, because most times if you tell people that and you humble yourself from the beginning, they're like, oh, cool. Like, this guy doesn't know as much. And like, I do, like, everyone's favorite topic is themselves to a degree. Let me talk about it. And I think that's how I've learned. So kind of just let people know that, hey, I may not know about this. Now, if I talk to a colleague who's in the same field as me, I still will try to find an area where I don't know as much and try to get them to talk about it. So that's the first thing, is let people know you don't know much about this, but balance that with doing some basic research. Like, you don't want to, if you connect with someone who's a huge expert in the field, try to know the very basics. So let people just kind of educate you on what they know, and just listen to them. And then what you should do is really kind of file away, whether you're taking notes actively or just actively listening, kind of think about, try to understand their thought pattern a bit or their thought process, because things we came up with around the whole referral network idea or the employee benefits thing, I saw people in other verticals do this, and their thing was, hey, if you can be the fountain, if you can be the source of something, then everyone comes to you, and you kind of become very valuable. Or if you can solve a problem that a company deals with, they're happy to pay for that problem. I learned that from someone who has an email marketing and a CRM and software. So think about, try to understand the underlying lessons of what they did. Like if someone says, hey, I did this in my business, don't hesitate to ask him, like, what was your thought process, or why'd you do it? Because they're going to give you an answer that applies in their context. Like, I don't know, Parag, if I go, you represent, I know, a number of people in the medical field and doctors and company owners. If I go ask one of them, why'd you do this in your medical practice? Okay, the answer is specific to medicine, but it could have relationship to that. So try to look at the underlying patterns of why people do things. And I think that's going to give you a lot of instruction. So once you get them talking, just look a layer deeper. Why does that move make sense in that context, and how can you apply it in your business? And not everything will be applied, but if you listen to enough people and think about it, you will start to see the connections.
Yeah, I agree with that. And part of it is, I think about it this way: life has a bunch of algorithms, and there are different algorithms for solving problems. And sometimes you can have multiple algorithms that can solve the same problem. But sometimes one algorithm is better than another because of a multitude of reasons. For example, one algorithm may be cheaper, it may be faster, maybe more efficient. It may just be something that you're more comfortable with or have more experience with. Therefore, you can do it faster, or you can do it alone without necessarily needing a bunch of help. So just gathering as many of those algorithms and understanding how people think about problems and solutions, especially when it comes to interdisciplinary approaches, meaning that's the one thing that's really fascinating to me when it comes to problem solving is the medical field, for example, will try to solve problems in one way, and that'll be many times limited to the medical field. The legal field will try to solve problems in a different way, and that'll be many times specific to the legal field. Marketing companies will try to solve problems in a completely different manner, and maybe in a more creative manner, arguably, than these other approaches. But when you look at and try to combine all of these different approaches to see what is the best one that fits here, and it may be a piece from medical, it may be a piece from legal, it may be a piece from marketing. I think many times, most of the time, you can fashion a better solution to a problem.
I think that's exactly right. I think connecting the dots, you hear that word a lot thrown around with entrepreneurship. And I think for anyone listening, until you start running your own business or nonprofit or company or whatever mission you're on, it won't always make sense. But once you do that, you'll take your area of domain expertise and look at other people's, and you'll sort of, start to connect it. And the other, this is more of a meta or a broad lesson that I'd share is try to, if you're willing to give before you receive, and you do that enough times, without sitting there and thinking, am I going to get something out of this person? I have an attorney that is in a field of law that, that becomes relevant to what we do. And we have referrals for him periodically, and not due to a lack of effort, but he rarely has referrals, for us, just because of the way his practice goes and all that. But I don't really sit there and worry about, oh, am I giving it and not getting? Think about, hey, how can you solve someone else's problem? And often you'll solve your own problem. He's solving a problem for us. But even if they weren't, think about how you can give to others, and find out what they're looking for. I mean, I always like to ask one great question if you're meeting another fellow business owner, just ask them, like, hey, what sort of referrals or customers are ideal for you? I mean, if I'm a foodie, so I love to go back to the restaurant example. Like if, I don't know, if someone's running a Thai restaurant, they'd be like, well, anyone who likes good Thai food and wants a cool atmosphere probably should come to me. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, if I had their food and I liked it, and tell someone about it. Or if I know what Parag does, which I do, since I've had the pleasure of referring people, then I know that. So ask people what they're looking for, and then maybe make a note of it, put it into a spreadsheet. Is something that I've started doing more recently. Listen to what other people are looking for, and you never know. And that'll also help you, because you might have someone contact you with a particular issue in whatever business you're in. And if you've organized your information and your network, you're going to know. Versus I've had multiple instances where I'm like, wait, who's that woman I talked to the one time who does this? And I'm trying to remember her. And then eventually I find it. Really be systematic about giving to others, because whoever you refer to them or help them with, or whoever you connect them with, someone, it might not be a client, it might be someone who can help them with marketing or their CPA, whoever it is, A, they're going to remember you, and B, you're putting something good out in the universe. And everyone involved, even if you take a very selfish approach, everyone involved is going to be like, hey, Parag really helped me, or Shiva really helped me. They did this for me. And that ultimately will come back to you in one way or another.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's this, whether it's a karmic principle or just everyday life of the law of reciprocity, or some other principle that we haven't even discovered yet or put a name on. But this idea of, if you want something, put it out first. If you want someone to help you with something, provide or offer help to somebody else. If you're looking for money, donate money. If you're looking for love, give love. And many times, somehow, it finds you. So
it does. Yeah. And you have to believe it, because the thing is, in entrepreneurship, guys, look, I mean, you know, in my case, I've been running what we do for a while. I know Parag has as well, but the early days, it's not going to feel like it. You're like, I'm helping people, I'm doing this. I mean, Parag, you and I have talked. I mean, the early days, you answer questions for free, or you feel, it feels like it's free, even if the person did a paid consultation with you. You look at the amount it took out, and you're like, wait, what am I doing? But understand that if you keep getting better at what you do and you keep giving, eventually all those things are going to come back to you. And I'll just a really quick story that doesn't, it's not my story, but when I worked in New York City in real estate, there was a gentleman who worked in the brokerage that I started out at, who helped this woman who worked at a doctor's office as a receptionist. She helped her rent her first apartment when she moved to New York City at age 22 or 23, her and a roommate. We're talking back in probably the late 90s. Okay, I guess it was that this happened. I wasn't doing this in the late 90s. I was in high school, but whatever. This was what this broker did. Eventually, that woman moved and got another place, and she told a few friends, hey, this guy Scott really helped me. He got more business. Eventually, he did that a few times. Eventually, she ended up moving out of the city and moving to New Jersey. She met a guy. They started a family. He referred to a colleague in New Jersey, got a referral fee. But she kept working at the doctor's office. And she told the doctor, she's like, look, I know you know so-and-so fancy realtor, but this guy's really good. He rents apartments, he sells. And eventually she brought him in, and he ended up having lunch with the doctor. And the doctor bought a $4.5 million place. And this is in the mid 2000s, a $4.5 million apartment in New York City. For those who know real estate, that's a commission of over $100,000 at that time that came in, all because he was giving. And he was giving, yeah, he made a little money, but he wasn't making a lot of money helping her rent a $1,400 apartment. But eventually it paid off because he put something good out there. And that story from a long time ago, I always kind of think of that because I've experienced variations of that myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have too. So I can vouch for that. Many times the thing that sometimes you're actively seeking it won't find you, and you won't find it. But when you put out that the effort and from the mindset of service, many times that thing, whatever it is that you're looking for, will end up finding you. Mm-hmm. So speaking of finding things, if our listeners want to find your website or learn more about Tier 1 or about you personally, how can they do that?
Sure. So to learn about Tier 1, you can visit www.tier1credit.com. That's TIERONECREDIT.com. Go there. You're welcome to schedule an appointment with our team. And you know, my staff will speak with you if you have a credit issue, whatever, any kind of legal issue, really. Come to us there. We'll be happy to answer the questions. And if it's something that requires my involvement, based on the type of case, of course we will. On the other hand, if you want to reach out to me directly, I'm always happy to. My email is my first name, Shiva, SHIVA, at the same thing, tier1credit.com, TIERONE, credit, CREDIT.com, or look up Shiva Bhaskar, BHASKAR. Look me up on LinkedIn. Always open to connecting with folks, hearing new ideas. You know, I can't take a lot of credit because I've gotten so much help along the way. So anyone who's a new business owner, and you just want an encouraging word, or you need something pointed in a more specific direction as far as who might help you, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email. And if I know someone who can help you, or if I can help you myself, I'll be happy to.
Love that. I appreciate that. And I can vouch for that. She's been a good friend for years. And he's been there through the ups and downs of my own entrepreneurial journey. And we've shared many meals together and many conversations, and I always enjoy them. And hopefully you have all enjoyed this conversation as well. If this is your first time tuning in, please make sure you like and subscribe depending on the platform you're on, so you know when the new episodes are coming out, and so I can continue to bring you value from excellent guests like Shiva and others to help you with your business and to help you go from crisis to justice. Thank you all so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.